The crash on planet Valoria. The stars outside the window were bright, like diamonds scattered across the dark sky. Jace, a young human space explorer, sat in his small ship, staring at the blinking control lights. He was alone. Just him and the silence of space. He was heading back to Earth after delivering supplies to a nearby station. It was supposed to be a normal trip, but something didn't feel right. Suddenly, the ship shook. A loud alarm rang through the cockpit. Red lights flashed everywhere. "Warning! Engine failure," the ship's voice called out. Jace jumped to his feet. He pressed buttons quickly, trying to stop the ship from falling apart. The screen showed a nearby planet, green, blue, and full of life. "I don't have a choice," he said to himself. "I have to land there." The ship entered the planet's atmosphere fast. Flames danced on the outside windows. The engines roared louder than ever before. Jace's hands tightened around the controls. The ship crashed through the trees, breaking branches and hitting the ground with a huge bang. Smoke rose into the air. Sparks flew everywhere. Then, everything went dark. Jace opened his eyes slowly. His head was spinning. The ship was broken. The air smelled like burnt metal and wet earth. He unbuckled himself and stood up, holding his side. His suit was torn, and there was blood on his shirt. He looked around. Outside the window, he saw tall trees with glowing leaves. Strange flowers moved like they were breathing. The planet didn't look dangerous, but it didn't feel safe either. He stepped out of the ship. The ground was soft, and the air was warm. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. "Where am I?" Jace whispered. He walked slowly, holding a small flashlight. Every sound made him nervous. A branch cracked behind him, but when he turned, no one was there. Then he saw something strange. A cave with drawings on its walls. The pictures showed two figures, a human boy and a tall alien girl. They were holding hands. Jace stopped. Something about the drawing made his chest feel heavy, like he had seen it before. But that was impossible. He had never been to this planet. At least, that's what he thought. He moved closer. One of the figures looked just like him. Same messy hair, same necklace. He touched the wall, and for a second, his fingers felt warm, like the stone remembered him. Suddenly, a sound came from deep inside the cave. A soft whisper. "Jace." He turned around fast, pointing the flashlight. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. He stepped back out of the cave, heart beating fast. Something was wrong. He felt watched. The forest was silent again. Then, from the shadows of the trees, someone stepped out. It was a woman, but not human. She was tall, with glowing blue skin and eyes like the ocean. Her long silver hair moved like the wind, even though there was no breeze. She looked at him with sadness, but also hope. Jace stepped back. "Who are you?" The woman didn't answer at first. She looked at his face, then his hands, then the necklace around his neck. Finally, she spoke. "You don't remember me, do you?" Jace froze. Her voice was soft, but full of pain. "I think you have the wrong person," he said. The woman stepped closer. "You came here long ago. As a child, you promised me forever. You said you'd return." Jace shook his head. "No, that can't be true. I've never." But then his head started to hurt. A flash of memory. A tree with glowing leaves. A girl laughing, holding hands under the stars. A promise. He grabbed his head. "What is this?" The woman reached out, gently touching his shoulder. "My name is Ayara," she said. "You were my best friend, and I waited for you." Jace looked into her eyes. Something inside him felt broken, and slowly it was coming back together. Before he could speak, a loud sound echoed in the distance, a strange animal cry. Ayara's face changed. "They're coming," she said quickly. "If they find you, they'll kill you." Jace blinked. Who? She grabbed his hand. No time. You're not safe here. Jace stared at her, heart racing. This planet, this girl, the memories in his head, none of it made sense. But deep down, he felt something true. He had been here before, and someone had waited for him all this time. Her name was Ayara. Jace ran through the thick forest, breath heavy, heart pounding. Ayara pulled his hand, guiding him between the glowing trees and giant roots. Behind them, strange growls echoed through the night. The sounds were getting closer. He didn't know who, or what, was chasing them. But he trusted Ayara, even if he didn't remember her. They finally stopped near a waterfall that sparkled under the two moons above. The light hit Ayara's skin, making it glow softly. She turned around and looked at Jace, breathing hard. "You're still fast," she said with a small smile. Jace bent forward, catching his breath. What were those things?" "They're called trackers," Ayara said. "They sense human energy. If they find you, they'll take you to the council. Or worse." "The council?" Jace asked, confused. Ayara looked at him carefully. "They told everyone you were dangerous, that humans could not be trusted. After you disappeared, they made a new rule: no human contact. Ever." Jace stared at her. "Wait, what do you mean, after I disappeared? What are you talking about?" Ayara stepped closer, her voice soft. "You don't remember anything, do you?" He shook his head slowly. I saw drawings in that cave. They felt familiar. And when you said my name, something happened inside my head. A flash. A memory. But I don't know why." She looked into his eyes, sadness building. "Then I'll help you remember." They walked through the forest for another hour until they reached a quiet place hidden between two hills. There was a small house made from tree bark and crystal stones. It looked like something from a dream. Natural, warm, and glowing with soft light. "This is my home," Ayara said as she opened the door. Jace stepped inside slowly. The walls had paintings, beautiful, glowing images of stars, flowers, and him. A young boy with messy brown hair. Did you draw these?" he asked. Ayara nodded. "Every year on the day you left, I added one." She walked to a box in the corner and pulled something out. It was old, made from silver metal and beads, a broken necklace. Jace's eyes widened. "I had one just like that," he whispered. "This is yours," Ayara said. "I gave it to you." Suddenly, pain hit his head again. He fell to his knees. Visions exploded in his mind. Soft grass under his feet. Laughter. Two small children running through glowing fields. He saw Ayara as a child, smiling, and himself holding her hand. A memory spoke loud in his head. "Promise me you'll never forget." "I promise. Forever." Then the sound of screaming, bright lights, and darkness. Jace opened his eyes, gasping. Ayara knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" "I remember," he whispered. "I remember the tree, the promise, and you." Tears welled up in Ayara's eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was heavy with something old, something real. "How did I get here back then?" Jace asked. "And why did I forget everything?" Ayara stood and began to explain. "Years ago, a human ship was testing new wormholes. Something went wrong. A child, you, was pulled through space and landed here on Valoria. I found you near the river. You were alone. Scared. I was a child too, always alone. We became friends. Every day, we played, explored, shared stories. You were my whole world." She walked to the window and stared at the stars. "Then one day, humans came. Your people found a way to bring you back. I tried to stop them, but they took you. You screamed my name. You promised you would return. But I waited, and you never came. Jace felt his chest tighten. I didn't know. I swear. I must have been forced to forget. They erased your memories, Ayara said, to protect Earth, to hide the fact that you were here. She turned around, eyes glowing with pain. But I remembered every single day. I waited, hoping you'd come back. Jace looked around the small house. He saw how much love she had held for him all this time, how much she had lost. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know. But I'm here now. Ayara smiled, but only for a second. They'll come for you. You broke the rule by returning. If the council learns that you're here, they'll punish us both. Then let's leave, Jace said. I have a ship. Ayara shook her head. You crashed, remember? Your ship is broken. And even if it wasn't, you can't fly past the shields now. Valoria is locked. Jace stood up. There must be another way. There is one, Ayara said slowly. But it's dangerous. We must go to the crystal forest. It remembers everything, even the truth. What truth? Ayara walked toward a hidden door at the back of the house. That your return wasn't an accident. Jace looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Ayara paused. Then she said, I think someone sent you back here for a reason. The forbidden memory. The sun on Valoria rose slowly, casting golden light over the strange purple sky. The trees shimmered with dew, their crystal leaves whispering softly in the wind. Inside Ayara's small home, Jace sat by the window, staring into the distance. He hadn't slept all night. His mind was full of fragments, flashes of another life, of running barefoot through glowing fields, of laughter beside a silver lake, of two small hands locked together under the stars. He remembered, bits and pieces, but the full picture was still missing. Ayara moved silently around the room, preparing their journey. We'll leave before the sun is high, she said. The crystal forest is far, and the path is watched. Jace nodded. You said the forest remembers everything, that it holds the truth. She turned to him. Yes, but it doesn't give answers easily. The forest speaks only to those it trusts. We'll need to go deep, deeper than anyone has in 100 years. He stood. Then we go together. They began their journey at dawn, walking through thick trees and strange plants that hummed softly. Some plants reached out like they were curious. Others closed up as they passed, as if afraid. Valoria was alive in a way Earth never was. As they walked, Ayara began to tell stories. Her voice was soft, almost musical. Do you remember the blue tree? She asked. Jace frowned. The one near the lake. Ayara smiled. Yes, that's where we used to sit. I taught you how to read our language. You taught me to whistle. You always carried stones in your pocket and pretended you were a space explorer. You said one day you'd take me with you to see the stars. Jace looked down. And I never came back. You were taken, she said firmly. It wasn't your fault. But the pain. Her voice cracked. The pain never left. They'd walked in silence after that. Hours passed. The trees changed. The ground began to glow with soft blue light. The air was thick, like it held forgotten words. And then they saw it. The crystal forest. It stretched far and wide. Tall crystal trees that shimmered in the light, like frozen lightning. The ground was covered in silver dust that sparkled with every step. A strange hum filled the air, like thousands of voices whispering memories. Jace stopped and stared in awe. It's beautiful. Ayara nodded, but also dangerous. They stepped inside. As soon as Jace's foot touched the forest floor, the humming grew louder. The trees pulsed softly, like they were alive. Ayara reached for his hand. Stay close. The forest can sense fear. And secrets. They walked between the crystal trunks, their reflections dancing in every direction. Suddenly, a tree lit up as they passed. Then another. Then another. A path of light began to form ahead of them. It's leading us, Jace said. Ayara nodded slowly. It remembers you. The path led them to a circle of ancient stones. In the center stood a large crystal, glowing with soft white light. Ayara stepped back. This is the heart crystal, she whispered. Place your hand on it. It may show you the memory you lost, or the one they tried to erase. Jace hesitated. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, a wave of light shot out, surrounding him. And then, darkness. He was a child again, running through the forest, laughing with Ayara beside the lake. He remembered everything now, the days they spent hiding from the guards, building a treehouse together, naming stars. Then came the night everything changed. He remembered the ship, the loud voices, human scientists in suits rushing through the forest. He was grabbed, pulled away. Ayara screamed. He kicked, cried, begged them not to take him. I promised her forever, he shouted. She's my friend. But they didn't listen. Then something new, something he never remembered before. As the humans carried him to the ship, a man in a black suit whispered to the others, "Wipe the memory. The council must never know we left a child here." And then, pain. A machine. A bright light. Silence. Jace pulled his hand away from the crystal and fell back, gasping. His eyes were wide with horror. They erased everything, he said. They didn't just take me. They made me forget. On purpose. Ayara knelt beside him. I'm sorry. He looked up at her. They lied to me. They lied to everyone. They made me forget you. Ayara touched his face gently. But now you remember. And that means everything. Suddenly, the humming in the forest grew louder. The trees began to flicker red. Ayara stood quickly. Someone's coming. Jace stood too. Who? Ayara looked into the distance. Then a voice echoed through the forest, deep, angry, powerful. The human has touched the forbidden memory. He must be taken. Jace turned and saw shadowy figures entering the forest, council guards. They wore armor that shimmered like mirrors, and their weapons glowed with bright blue energy. Run, Ayara shouted, but the forest closed behind them. No, Jace said. We fight. Ayara looked at him, eyes wide. You could be killed. Jace stepped forward, fists clenched. Then let them try. I won't lose you again. The heart crystal behind them pulsed with light, and suddenly something strange happened. The ground shook. The crystal trees began to glow brighter than ever. Ayara stared in disbelief. The forest, it's protecting you. Jace stood tall. I remember now, he said. I remember everything. Hunters of the past. The crystal forest lit up like a storm of stars. Bright lights flowed from tree to tree, and a strange energy moved through the air. The ground trembled, but not with fear. It pulsed with power. The forest had chosen a side. Jace stood at the center of the glowing grove, breathing hard, fists clenched. The heart crystal behind him continued to shine. Ayara stepped beside him, her eyes wide with shock. Never in her life had she seen the forest come alive like this. It's protecting you, she whispered. No, Jace said softly. It's protecting us. Suddenly, sharp sounds broke through the light. Metal footsteps. Figures in silver-black armor marched into the grove. They were tall, faceless, and cold. The council guards. But these weren't just guards. These were hunters of the past, a secret order trained to find and erase forbidden truths. Ayara's breath caught in her throat. The hunters. I thought they were just a legend. They're real, Jace said grimly, watching them closely. And they're here for me. One of the hunters stepped forward. His armor shimmered like glass, reflecting the forest light. His voice was deep and sharp like ice. Human Jace Solon, you have touched the forbidden memory. This is a violation of the Interplanet Treaty. You must surrender. Jace didn't move. I didn't ask to come here. I crashed. You remembered, the hunter replied. That is the crime. Ayara stepped between Jace and the hunter. Her voice was strong. He was a child. You erased his mind. That was the real crime. Another hunter stepped forward, raising a glowing weapon. Silence, traitor. Suddenly, the crystal trees around them began to hum again. The ground beneath the hunters cracked slightly. The forest was growing angry. Jace took a step forward, raising his voice. This forest remembers me. This planet remembers me. You can't silence the truth anymore. The lead hunter pointed at him. Then you will die with it. Everything exploded into motion. The hunters raised their energy weapons. Ayara grabbed Jace's hand and pulled him aside just as a beam shot past them, hitting a tree and causing it to burst into dust. They ducked behind a stone and sprinted into the glowing paths of the forest. This way, Ayara shouted. Jace followed, dodging blasts and leaping over roots. Behind them, the hunters gave chase, silent, cold, and deadly. The forest responded. Branches moved on their own. Vines reached out to block the hunters' path. The air shimmered with protective magic. But the hunters were trained for this. They cut through vines, blasted away the trees, and kept coming. Ayara and Jace reached a clearing with a glowing stream in the middle. A single bridge crossed the water, thin, narrow, made of ancient wood. We have to cross, Ayara said. Jace looked back. You go first. She nodded and stepped onto the bridge, moving quickly. Halfway across, she turned and shouted, Jace. But then he saw one of the hunters raise a large cannon. The weapon powered up with a terrible hum. No, Jace screamed and ran forward. He dove toward Ayara, just as the beam fired. It missed the bridge but hit the water, sending up a huge wave of energy. The bridge shattered. Jace and Ayara fell. They hit the cold water hard and were pulled under by the current. Everything became a blur. Light, sound, pain. Jace grabbed Ayara's arm and fought his way to the surface. They burst out of the water, gasping for air. We have to swim, he shouted. Ayara nodded. Together, they swam to the far shore and collapsed on the sand. Behind them, the hunters searched the broken forest, but did not cross the water. Ayara sat up, coughing. They won't follow us across. Why not? Jace asked. This side of the forest is sacred. The hunters are forbidden here. Jace looked around. The forest was different here, older, quieter, and filled with strange golden light. The trees were taller, and the ground was warm. Ayara stood slowly. This is the place where our ancestors bonded with the first humans. What do you mean? Jace asked. She turned to face him. A long time ago, before the ban, humans and the Lorians lived in peace. They shared knowledge, stories, even love. My great-grandmother once bonded with a human explorer. Their connection saved both worlds from war. Jace blinked. Then why was it all erased? Ayara's face darkened. Fear. The council believed emotions made us weak. They erased history, erased the bonds. And when you and I became friends, they panicked. Jace's voice was low. So they took me, made me forget, lied to the galaxy. But the forest never forgot, Ayara said. Jace looked down at his hands. Ayara, why do I feel like there's more? Like we were more than just friends. She paused. Then, slowly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. It was a tiny ring, handmade, child-sized, made of woven silver grass. Jace gasped. I made that, he whispered. Ayara nodded. The day before they took you, you gave it to me and said, this is my promise. Forever. His eyes filled with tears. I remember now. She placed the ring in his hand. You never broke the promise, Jace. You were taken, but now you're back. A quiet wind blew through the sacred grove. The trees swayed gently, as if they were listening. Then Ayara's face changed. Her eyes narrowed. "We're not alone." Jace turned. From the shadows stepped a figure, not armored, not a hunter, but a Valorian elder, a woman with a long robe, golden eyes, and white markings on her face. Ayara stepped in front of Jace. "Elder Maya." The old woman spoke softly. "You broke the law, Ayara, but perhaps the law was broken long before you." Jace didn't understand. "Who are you?" "I am the last living memory keeper," Maya said, "and I have waited for this moment for many years." She looked at them both. "The time has come to reveal the truth about why you were sent back here, Jace Solon, and what your return truly means." He escaped through the crystals. The sacred side of the crystal forest had grown silent. Even the wind stopped whispering. Jace stood with Ayara beside the glowing trees, facing the ancient Valorian woman, Elder Maya, the last memory keeper. Her golden eyes glowed faintly under the light of Valoria's twin moons. Her long robe shimmered like woven starlight. She walked slowly toward Jace, as if she had seen him before, long, long ago. "You've grown," Maya said, her voice soft, warm, but filled with age. "But your soul, it still feels the same." Jace blinked. "You know me." Maya smiled gently. "I knew you the moment you touched the heart crystal, the forest told me. It remembered you. And so did I." Jace took a step forward. "Please, I need to know the truth. Why was I brought here again? Why can't I leave? What do they want from me?" Maya studied his face. "You think you came back by accident, but the universe does not make such mistakes." Ayara stayed close to Jace, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She looked at the elder with cautious hope. "You knew he would return." Maya nodded slowly. "I did not know when, but the signs were written in the old light. When the blue star burns low, and the forest hums at night, the child from the stars will return to finish what he began." "I didn't begin anything," Jace said. "I was just a boy." "But your bond," Maya said, pointing gently to him and Ayara, "your promise, that was no small thing. The kind of bond you made, deep, pure, between two souls of different worlds. It opened something ancient, something powerful, something the council feared." Jace swallowed hard. "They erased my memories because they were scared." "They erased your connection to protect their control," Maya said, "to break the bridge between Valoria and Earth forever. But no law, no memory wipe, can break what is made by the heart." Ayara looked into Jace's eyes. "That's why you remembered, even after all these years." Maya stepped closer and placed something into Jace's hand. A small round crystal, pale, glowing softly from within. It pulsed with warmth. "This," she said, "is a soul shard. It was formed the moment you made your promise to Ayara. It contains the bond between you. And now, it's active again." The crystal suddenly flared in Jace's palm, and he gasped. A memory exploded inside him, but not a memory of the past. A vision. He saw Earth, burning. He saw Valoria, crumbling. He saw darkness spreading between the stars. Then, in the center of it all, Ayara's face, crying, and his own voice, whispering, "Forever means I protect you, no matter the cost." The vision ended. Jace fell to one knee. Ayara rushed to him. "Jace, what did you see?" He looked up slowly. "The future." Maya's voice was serious now. "Your bond isn't just emotional. It's spiritual, cosmic. You two were meant to change something, or prevent something." Jace looked at her. "Prevent what?" Before Maya could answer, the ground shook. The light in the trees began to fade. The air became heavy. Ayara's eyes widened. "They're coming." From the shadows, the sound of armor echoed again. The hunters had found a way through. "No," Maya said sharply. "They should not be able to enter here." Ayara turned toward the edge of the forest. They're using a corruption crystal. It's poisoning the sacred roots. Maya clenched her fists. Then we must escape, not through the forest, but through the crystals of descent. Jace frowned. What are those? Ayara looked at him, half afraid, half ready. A hidden tunnel of living crystal. It takes you deep below Valoria, to where no one dares go. It's our only chance, Maya said. Without waiting, she touched a tree with her staff. The bark split open, revealing a staircase made of pure light, spiraling downward into the earth. Hurry, Maya ordered. Jace and Ayara ran first, Maya following close behind. Behind them, the roar of the hunters grew louder. As the three disappeared underground, the entrance sealed behind them with a hiss. The tunnel below was like nothing Jace had ever seen. The walls were made of glowing crystal veins, pulsing like the inside of a living creature. Light danced in waves around them. The air was cold but sweet. This is incredible, he whispered. Ayara nodded. These crystals are alive. They feed on truth. Maya walked slowly, her eyes closed, and they reveal what's hidden. Suddenly, the tunnel stopped at a large open chamber. In the center stood a tall crystal shaped like a tower. Place your soul shard inside, Maya said. Jace hesitated, then stepped forward and placed the glowing shard into the hollow at the base of the tower. The chamber exploded in light. But this time, it was different. The crystal didn't show memories. It showed the future. Jace and Ayara stood together, leading humans and Valorians side by side, healing, building, exploring the stars together again. Then the vision shifted. They saw a shadow, one of the council members, his face hidden, but his voice was clear. If we kill the boy, the bond ends. The balance returns. The vision shattered. Ayara gasped. They plan to kill you, not just to stop the truth, but to stop peace. Maya looked at Jace with pain in her eyes. They want war. Fear gives them power. But your bond, it could end the cycle. Jace stood tall now. No more running. He turned to Ayara. We go back. We show them everything. The truth. The bond. The crystal. If they still want to stop us, they'll have to face the full power of this bond. Ayara nodded. Together, Maya placed a hand on their shoulders. You are no longer just two people. You are a symbol. Let them see it. And with that, the ancient crystal lit a new path, leading them back to the surface. Not to hide, but to rise. The choice of forever. The sacred tunnel glowed behind them, its light slowly fading as the path closed. Jace, Ayara, and Elder Maya stood on a cliffside ledge high above the Valorian capital. Below them, the city shimmered like a silver star, floating buildings, glowing streets, and spires that reached for the sky. But all of it felt cold now. Dark. Because Jace knew what waited inside the council hall wasn't peace, it was judgment. He turned to Maya. They'll try to stop us. Maybe even kill us. Maya nodded, her voice calm but firm. Yes, but you carry something greater than fear. You carry truth, and truth always finds a way. Ayara stepped beside him. They need to see it. See us, not just as enemies, not as rule breakers, but as a bond that never died. Jace looked at her, and for a brief second, the world faded. All the pain, all the fear, all that remained was her. I'm not afraid, he said softly. Not when I'm with you. Ayara smiled. Then let's walk into the storm together. They made their way to the council hall, an enormous structure carved from crystal and metal, resting in the heart of Valoria. As they approached, guards blocked their path. Their weapons hummed with power. Step away, one guard warned. This is council ground. Unauthorized entry is forbidden. Elder Maya stepped forward. I am Elder Maya, last of the memory keepers. I invoke the ancient right of truth. The guards hesitated. Then, slowly, they stepped aside. The great doors opened. Inside, a long hallway led to a tall chamber filled with 12 council members seated in a half-circle. Their faces were hidden behind glowing masks, their robes dark and flowing like smoke. The room was silent, until one voice spoke. Human Jace Solon. Alien Ayara Velfe. You stand before the High Council in violation of Galactic Law 117, the separation mandate. Another voice followed. You touched forbidden knowledge. You broke sacred boundaries. You reactivated the soul shard. Why? Jace stepped forward, not shaking, not afraid. Because I remembered. Remembered what? A third voice asked coldly. He looked around the room. I remembered the truth, that when I was a child, you took me from this planet. You wiped my mind. You tried to erase her, Ayara, from my soul. He pointed at the glowing shard on the floor in front of him. But you failed. Our bond lived. Even across time. Even across worlds. Ayara stepped beside him. We were children. We made a promise. And that promise, forever, was not just words. It was real. Stronger than laws. Stronger than lies. A fourth council member leaned forward. You risk war. Do you not understand what your bond represents? Unity between two species could destroy centuries of separation. Elder Maya finally spoke. Or it could heal them. The council was silent. Jace looked each member in the eye, even though he couldn't see their faces. You're afraid, he said quietly. Afraid of change. Afraid of peace. Because peace means sharing power. A low hum of disapproval echoed. Another council member spoke sharply. You were never meant to return. The crash was not in our control, but your continued existence is. Ayara's fists clenched. If you hurt him, you will only prove everything we said. Jace held up the soul shard. This crystal holds not just memory, but vision. It showed us the future. War, death. Unless we stand together. The room darkened slightly. Then the head of the council, whose mask glowed red, finally spoke. You ask us to break the law because of a feeling. A childhood bond. No, Jace said. I ask you to make a choice, just like I did. He turned to Ayara, slowly reached into his jacket, and pulled out the old silver grass ring. It had been crushed, bent, and faded by time. But it still shimmered faintly in the light. I made this when I didn't even know what love was. I just knew I wanted to see her face every day. I wanted to protect her. He walked to Ayara and knelt down. The council gasped. Jace placed the ring on her finger and looked up at her. Ayara Velfe, will you choose forever again, even when the world says no? Ayara's voice trembled, but her answer was clear. Yes. The soul shard exploded in golden light. The council was forced to shield their eyes. Energy filled the hall. Warm, powerful, ancient. The bond was complete. The promise reborn. When the light faded, silence fell again. But everything had changed. One council member finally stood and removed their mask. An old Valorian woman, wrinkled, tired, but with tears in her eyes. I once made a promise too, she said, but I was forced to break it. She looked at the others. We've lived in fear for too long. Maybe it's time to live in truth. One by one, the council removed their masks. Some were angry. Some were silent. But some were smiling. Finally, the head of the council stood and said, Then let it be written. The bond is real, and the choice is forever. Later that night, Jace and Ayara stood under the glowing tree where they once made their promise as children. She leaned against him, her hand in his. You really knelt in front of the council, she teased. I panicked. He smiled. Ayara laughed softly. It was perfect. He looked at her, serious now. I meant every word. I'm not leaving again. Not without you. She nodded. Then stay. We'll explore the stars. together. As the wind passed through the tree, a soft sound whispered between the leaves. It almost sounded like a voice from long ago. Forever. The bond that changed the stars. Valoria's twin suns rose slowly above the horizon, washing the land in warm golden light. The crystal forest shimmered in peace. Birds with soft glowing wings flew across the sky. Rivers sparkled like silver threads, winding through the emerald valleys. Jace stood at the edge of a cliff with Ayara beside him, watching the world come alive. It was a different world now. A world changed by one bond. News of the Council's decision spread fast across the planet. For the first time in centuries, the separation mandate was lifted. Valorians and humans could speak, meet, and even share knowledge again. The ancient history that was once hidden was now being restored. But with that change came questions. Not everyone was ready for unity. Not everyone believed in peace. Some still feared it. And that's why Jace and Ayara were preparing for something greater, something beyond Valoria. In the days that followed, a new mission was formed. With the Council's blessing, Jace and Ayara were selected to lead the first interplanetary unity project, a journey to Earth's high councils to open talks between worlds. They would go not as lovers, not just as symbols, but as ambassadors of peace. As they walked through the city, crowds gathered, Valorians standing beside humans who had remained hidden on the planet all these years. Survivors, dreamers, believers, they all reached out to touch Jace and Ayara as they passed, not as celebrities, but as hope. Inside the spaceport, a new ship waited, sleek, silver, and crafted with both Valorian and human technology. It had no weapons, only a single message written across its body in both languages. Forever means peace. Ayara smiled as she saw the ship. We'll name it after the tree, she said. Jace nodded. The promised tree. Before the launch, Elder Maya called them to a quiet chamber. Her face was calm, but her voice held meaning. You two have done what no law, no war, no weapon could do. You reminded both our worlds of something powerful. The bond between hearts is stronger than fear. She handed Ayara a crystal pendant. This was mine, long ago, before the walls were built. It belonged to someone I once loved and lost. Ayara took it with tears in her eyes. We won't fail. Maya looked at Jace. And you, child of Earth, son of the stars, remember this. Truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. And you carry it now. Jace bowed his head. Thank you for believing in us. The day of the launch arrived. The Council, the Elders, the Memory Keepers, the Forest Guardians, even distant tribes, came to witness it. It wasn't just a flight. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both planets. Jace took one last walk through the grove where he first met Ayara again. The glowing tree still stood, taller than ever. Its branches sparkled in the wind. He placed a small charm on the base, his childhood necklace, repaired. For the boy I was, he whispered. For the promise I kept. Ayara joined him. She took his hand and said, Ready? He nodded. With you. Always. The ship rose slowly into the sky, the engines humming like a song. As they broke through the clouds, Valoria shrank below them. But it didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like the start of something far bigger. Inside the cockpit, Jace stared out at the stars. Do you think Earth is ready for this? Ayara smiled. They might not be, but we are. They activated the jump crystal, and the ship vanished into the stars. 2 weeks later, Earth orbit. The promised tree ship arrived above Earth, where a massive human station waited. Dozens of military ships floated nearby, watching closely. Tensions were high. Earth had no idea what to expect. A message was sent from the Valorian ship. We come in peace. We bring the truth. Let us speak. After long silence, Earth's High Council agreed to meet. Jace walked into the chamber, wearing both Earth's symbol and the Valorian mark of peace on his jacket. Ayara walked beside him, tall and graceful, unafraid. Gasps filled the room. A human and an alien, side by side, smiling, together. The Earth leaders looked at each other, unsure what to say. Finally, one asked, "Why are you here?" Jace looked around the room, then stepped forward and answered, "I am Jace Solon, once lost, once forgotten. This is Ayara Velfay, once feared, once alone. We come not as strangers. We come as a reminder that peace is not created by law, but by love." He paused. "We were children from two worlds, separated by fear, but even memory loss couldn't erase our bond. Even distance couldn't break our promise." Ayara stepped forward. "And now we offer that bond to both worlds, so that no child ever has to grow up believing they are alone, so that no truth is ever hidden again." The room went quiet. A moment later, an old Earth general stood. He had scars on his face and war in his eyes. But he stepped forward and said one word: "Welcome." 3 months later, a Unity Academy was built on the edge of Earth's moon. Valorian and human children learning side by side. History books were rewritten. The old laws were burned. New songs were sung. And every classroom had a statue at the center, a boy and a girl, holding hands under a glowing tree. 1 year later, the promised tree, Valoria. Jace and Ayara returned to Valoria under soft moonlight. The tree glowed brighter than ever. Around it were hundreds of people, humans, Valorians, travelers, dreamers, children. They weren't just remembering history. They were living it. Jace looked up at the stars. "They said one bond couldn't change the world," he whispered. Ayara leaned into him. They were wrong. And above them, carved in both Earth and Valorian language, the words shimmered in golden light. "You promised me forever, human, and you kept it."